Welcome to the channel. Here's another camera from my collection, and this time it's a very peculiar design, a very rare camera. I've only seen this in, let's say, at least I think one auction and one collection has had this. As far as I know, this wasn't done for a very long time, and despite I have quite a lot of reference books for British cameras and other cameras, there's only basically one advertisement I've seen and one reference of this. And this one is estimated to be from around 1914, so slightly before World War I, and certain sources suggest this camera, well, they didn't sell many of these and they stopped making this in general in the advent of World War I. Let's look at it a bit closer. So this is a really rare one. In the bottom here it says Ensign focal plane camera, British made, Houghtons Limited, London. And then there's patents, but the patents don't hold any year numbers as far as I understand, unless it's 06, 08 and 010. But nonetheless, the only sources I have suggest this was done before World War I. Let's look at this first bit around. So it's a box, and well, here's the shutter panel, here's the front face, here's a shutter button, and here's the control panel. This is rather interesting because assuming this would really be from around before World War I, and this one has a single dial adjustment for the entire shutter, so setting of the time, speeds and so on, or the exposure. This is really rare because I think there's only one. Most of the cameras of this time had multiple controls, QWERTYs and so on, and the shutter system wasn't very advanced yet, except Ross made pan-Ross cameras that also had a very advanced and I would say modern adjustment of the shutter. Here's the back. So this was sold in a few different sizes, a few different lens options, and that's about it. I don't unfortunately have the lens for this because the one meant for this one is a really rare type and a rare size, and I've been hunting it for best part of 20 years. Well, if any one of you have one of these or know which lens to put here, please, and especially if you have one. So I will go to that a bit later. So let's open up this camera. This I need to be really carefully because this is pre-World War I, so this is over 100 years old, this camera. I've owned this for several decades, and in the beginning I a few times tried, and the shutter actually does still work, but I do not try to try that too many times. And there's another sign there, made in England by the Houghtons Butcher Manufacturing Company Limited, London. Yeah, there's the bottom with the typical attachment for tripod, and a side tripod attachment for vertical photographs, and a handle. This handle is in remarkably good condition for its age. In general, this one is in good condition, but the opening of the camera is rather fragile. So I'm very cautious and careful how I go about it. Here underneath you can see, here's the film holder. You can slide like this and the film holder comes out. So this is the one that came with it. It says Graflex film back adapter, so this is not Ensign's own original, this is by Graflex, but it's the one that came with it. And as you can see, the shutter cloth is in remarkably good condition for a camera that's what, if it's 1910, it would be around 110, 113 years old. So it's in remarkably good condition. However, I do not dare to operate this. And you can see there's the view on a part of the viewfinder. Okay. Here it goes. I'm opening it. Oh, yeah, I'm really careful with this camera because of the age. So let's take a more detailed look. I'm trying to keep it steady. So here's the camera in itself. It's got an unusual strut system mechanism like these two levers, and the whole front part basically falls up here between these two parts. So this one goes from here all the way up here, like you saw. Here's bellows, which are in remarkably good condition again. Beautifully black painted metal surfaces, most likely steel. Well, here's the frame viewfinder, and there's the equivalent rear one. And here's the lens cover. Unfortunately, I'm missing the lens, so that would be really cool to have. And also there's some sort of knob missing here. My guess it's something to do with the lens. Yeah, still, I mean, of course, I might have missed the lens. I'm not all time, last 30 years, I haven't been looking in eBay and all auctions, but yeah, still looking for the lens for this one to match. There was variations, and it could be like, I think like Cook anastigmat or something, or most likely it was since this probably was an American import that sold to US originally. So it was most likely a Tessar. My guess 4 inches or 5 inches, but it had the iris built into it, and also the focusing is from the lens. So it needs to have the both focusing and the iris. And finding 4 or 5 inch lenses with both of them and with the correct shape, because some of them are more protruding for certain cameras, then it's kind of one where the attachment is in the middle of the body. So as you can see, this needs to close. So the lens is kind of, the attachment is very high, quite close to the front of the lens. That one is difficult to find. I bought a lot of them and tried and didn't work. So I have a lot of old lenses. Yeah, it's beautifully made. I mean, I think everything what is not done today during the last 10, 20 years is beautifully made. But so yeah, this folding mechanism is rather unusual, that it's not like pulling, not like opening like a door or any direction, but rather it folds up and down. It's again in remarkably good condition. Yeah, sorry, I will not, this time I will not wind the shutter because of the age. I know that it worked. Last time I wound the shutter and tried it, it was 15 years ago, and it worked perfectly. And I would guess even the times was quite accurate, at least for the time. There are focal plane reflexes. There are other with very similar names than this camera, and which are much later, and you can find a lot of them easily. And when I've asked inquiries online about this one, people often refer to a whole host of other cameras, which Ensign and Houghtons and these different companies that, or whatever name this company had at that time. The name of the company changed multiple times, different combinations of these words. And many people have found and suggested me other cameras which are not this one. This is a really rare one, so there are similar names, but they are not this one. Some of them you can find pictures of, which people suggest names, but I did find in some of my reference catalogs some of the other what other people suggested. And yes, if you go to Photonet or some few other sites where you might find my name, my question about this asked a long time ago, and there's some very helpful person of the forum found an advertisement of this camera for me, but it didn't have even the focal length of the lens, nor did it have manufacturing date or anything in the advertisement. But based on online, it should be before World War I. And I was a bit suspicious because this shutter, how it's made here, I would guess this is more close to, should be like in the 1920s, 1930s. So it's a very, I would say, advanced type of shutter. I don't know its reason because this Houghtons Ensign, a company called Ross, which made cameras also before World War I, very advanced cameras. I have 2 of them. I will make videos of them later. They had a very advanced shutter system in the camera, but I wonder if this had something to do with the same company, or maybe a company that did the shutter for this and for the ROS cameras equally. The fate of both of the ROS cameras and this one was World War I. So neither one was sold much, except I understand ROS cameras was used somehow in trench warfare in the front. Let's look a bit more detailed. Yeah, there you can see some of the mechanism. Other side. And here's this where it clinches basically in place. So now it's time to put this old timer back to rest. And it folded there. And there it latches. This is, I was just really lucky when I noticed this camera for sale, because I have not seen, well, I've seen one in an auction from a famous collection, and that's it. I doubt they sold many of these. I would say it's a boxy camera like the time, actually surprisingly compact for the time. Like I said, the paintwork is pretty, the shutter is really advanced for its time. Yeah, I wish I had the lens. I don't know, would I ever dare to take a photograph with this one? Theoretically, I could. But here for you, my viewers, is Ensign focal length camera, British made by Houghtons, London. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video. And maybe if any of you will be able to help me find a lens for this one, yeah, maybe there would be a video about attaching the lens to this one as well. See you in next video.